start with our S&D event on public procurement. And first of all, of course, let me thank our S&D members and colleagues for organizing this very important hearing about EU public procurement. And thanks to all of you for being here and making this exchange of ideas possible. Always is important when we have important and key debates, and we will start now to work about this question here in the Parliament. It's always important to have our open eyes very, very open and to have this opportunity to exchange with all of you. The start of this mandate is a crucial moment. The EU is a crossroad facing complex economic, social and environmental challenges that demand bold and strategic responses. That is why it's so important to speak about key legislation for this mandate. And public procurement is an important part of these strategic responses. It is a powerful instrument that can drive Europe toward a more sustainable, fair and resilient economy. The Draghi and Letta reports have made it clear. Europe must lead the way in building an economy that is innovative, socially inclusive and sustainable. To secure Europe's future, we must act decisively to strengthen our industrial base, accelerate the green and digital transition, and to ensure that economic progress translates into real benefits for our people and shared prosperity. This is the European social model. It's unique around the world, and we have, in these difficult moments, we have to insist on it. Of course, it's important for all of us to have economic growth, but if this economic growth cannot translate in a better life for everybody, really we will lose this European social model. In this context, the revision of the EU public procurement directives is not just a bureaucratic exercise. It is a vital tool for shaping a resilient, sustainable and competitive European economy. It is clear, to achieve our shared goal, we need to make sure that investment is directed to key sectors. Public funding and incentives should be tied to our shared policy goals, ensuring that investment drives clean energy, social progress, digital innovation, advances manufacturing and other areas that define our future. This approach will not only modernize Europe's economies, but will also make sure that the economy serves the collective good and align with our vision for a fairer, greener and stronger Europe. Europe's economy future depends on our ability to maintain high-quality jobs and social cohesion while transition toward a net zero economy. Public contracts should no longer be aware based on cost alone, but must serve as instrument of progress, championing fair wages, collective bargaining, social justice, and good working conditions. Public procurement should reward companies that invest in workers and in sustainable production, making quality, fairness, and environmental responsibility the guiding principles of our economy. Europe has potential to be the global leader in the green economy, and public procurement is a key tool to achieve this. The transition to a sustainable economy is not just an environmental imperative, it is an economic opportunity. And maybe we have to insist a lot in this economic opportunity. By prioritizing sustainable production, energy efficiency and circular economy principles in public contracts, we can accelerate decarbonization. Europe's small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of our economy, yet they remain underrepresented in public procurement. This needs to change. Supporting SMEs is not just about economic fairness, it is about unleashing innovation and strengthening supply chains. Looking at the global political stage, we live in a era of global uncertainty. Public procurement is a powerful tool to strengthen Europe's independence and resilience. Using strategic investment conditionality, we can ensure that public procurement actively supports Europe's economic security while driving forward a bold and future-oriented industrial policy. And as a conclusion, this is a defining moment for Europe, and we have the opportunity to shape the future of Europe's economy. It is an opportunity to turn public procurement into a force for good, driving fair wages, high equality jobs, sustainable innovation and economic resilience. We, the S&D Group and our political family, know exactly what to do. It is our chance to set a progressive agenda in the interest of the people, one that others will follow. This hearing is a first opportunity to discuss and exchange the ideas. Together, let us seize this opportunity to build a greener, fair, and more competitive Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irache, for this setting the scene for the debates this afternoon. Dear colleagues, panelists, guests, I have to say it's a pleasure to welcome you here on this important hearing, and it's very good to see the room so filled with so many trade unionist activists, politicians, and experts. And because we put this topic on the agenda because, as Irache said, this is the moment to do it. And this is because we are convinced, really, that public procurement can be really a formidable instrument to help the European Union to achieve its goals in social, environmental, and economic objectives. And that we really need to be able more directing public money, and here public money, I would like to emphasize again, is the money of the citizens, towards really sustainable projects, and that we with this can on one hand accelerate the European Green Deal that came and will come under a lot of pressure, but also very, very important for our political group is that we can foster good working conditions, social inclusion, and also support for SMEs and social enterprises. And this is for us to deliver on the European promise. And when we look at the directive, and Irache said it, the current European directive on public procurement has failed to meet these objectives in the past. And this debate is not new. Many of us I see here in the room, we debate this for 20, 30 years already, and we can see that these processes are complex, they are lengthy, they are unclear, and also give a lot of flexibility, especially on social and sustainable criteria, and this leads to a huge variety and uneven implementation in the different member states. And for many, and I'm coming from a country where this is the case, many contracting authorities still focus primarily on cost, really, rather than on broader social and environmental benefits. And also, this has resulted for us in really missed opportunities here. We can and we need to stimulate innovation, improve working conditions, and accelerate the green transition. This is why we are looking forward here to the opportunity and to use it as progressives, to use this opportunity of the upcoming revision. And I mean, I guess that's the majority, at least here in the room, that we are all people that believe that voluntary measures are not sufficient here to drive this change, and that we need really better regulation here. And we want to make these criteria I mentioned obligatory so that we can really make sure that public spending actively supports decent working conditions, empowerment of local communities, and also green innovation. And that would be a public procurement that serves the people. And I would like also to emphasize our message with a quote which might be unusual for a progressive, of Winston Churchill, who once said, "The management of public finances is too serious a matter to be left only to accountants." And I think it needs a strong political and progressive dimension here. And this is what we are going to discuss this afternoon with our distinguished experts, guests, also practitioners here, to make really sure that the euro that we spend on public procurement contributes really to the objectives and goals Europe have. So I'm very happy to have so distinguished speakers here, all the stakeholders and experts. And I can only encourage you to really actively take part in this debate that we will organize in 2 panels of around 40 minutes each, and it will be followed by really your opportunity for questions and answers here. And that we are looking forward very much to inspiring discussions, because we don't do it just to do it. We want to take all ideas, inspirations, proposals with us for the work ahead here. So we will start our discussion with the first panel on mandatory social criteria in public procurement. I'm very happy that you see to my right our employment coordinator, Estelle Keulemans, and she will be the moderator of this forum and get you all engaged here. So Estelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gabby, and welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to see so many people because it's a huge challenge also for you, and very important topics, as Gabby said, and also Irache. Our first discussion panel will go about ensuring quality job and decent working conditions through public procurements, and we have really 4 very important experts for this discussion panel. I represent maybe the first Gabi. I don't really have to introduce Gabi, but just mention that she's our S&D rapporteur in Ample Committee for the Public Procurement Initiative report. It's also, but she's also our S&D Vice President for Sustainable Economy, Social Europe, and Single Markets. We will have also in this panel Esther Lynch. She will join us as soon as possible because she has had a meeting. But Esther is General Secretary of ATUC since 2022. And before, she was responsible for the legislation and social affairs for the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. And we have 2 experts also, Mr. Matthias Mauscher. Do I pronounce it? Is it okay? He's coordinator of policy and project for Social Services Europe and professor. Mr. Mauscher is an expert in the field of public procurement, and he has worked on several studies commissioned by European Commission and by the European Association of Services Providers for Persons with Disabilities. He's also collaborated with EPSU and some social NGOs. And we also have Mr. Nicolas Brun, do I pronounce it right, from the University of Helsinki. Mr. Brun is professor of private law. He's also researcher in the regulation of labor fields, European law and politics. But maybe as first introduction, I want to remember that we are now 5 years after the beginning of the COVID crisis, and this crisis shows how outsourced workers in sectors such as cleaning, security, and food services are essentials. But now we've got the feeling that the sense of urgency is no more about the needs of a real social Europe, and that the focus is only put it on the defense, political, and economical situation. The revision of the directive on public procurement is now at the agenda and is really a key moment. And we have to take this opportunity to strengthen the quality of jobs and stop the race to the bottom. I have 4 questions of points for you for this debate. And first, for you, what is the best strategy and what are the best practices we can use to put the social conditionalities at the top of the European agenda? Second, we know that today the price is the primary award criterion. So how can we ensure that other factors such as labor rights and working conditions will be more taken into account? Third, why asking for collective bargaining as main and mandatory criteria, knowing that some member states doesn't have real collective bargaining today and strong and independent unions? And finally, how to ensure to have more local and made in Europe through the revision of this directive. So I let you the floor, maybe first to Gabi, and then I will give also the floor to, so as you prefer.
Yeah, thank you, Gabi. Thank you, Estelle, for the invitation and the S&D group, obviously, to this hearing. I represent, as already said, Social Services Europe, which is a European umbrella organization of 8, soon 9 other networks of not-for-profit providers of social services. Also, you can say, coming from the social economy. We are signatories of a letter that was sent to the IMCO and the Employment Committee of a network of sustainable development in public procurement. And that also has been, so this one in end of January, and that takes up common asks of trade unions, of fair trade organizations, of environmental organizations, and of social NGOs. And so we are part of the more social NGOs, social services. We are part of the social economy. In the social economy, you have perhaps around 13 million workforce, and we would say that at least a third, if not 40% of this workforce is in social services. And in social services, you have in the EU 27, 11 million workers. So it's a lot of important workforce. It's a growing workforce. And what is important, a very high share of the operating costs are staff costs. 60 to 70%, I have data from the UK, from the care sector, for example. So there is a very strong interest to avoid social dumping or wage dumping and competition that is based on pay and employment conditions or on the make compromises on the quality of the services, which are highly dependent on qualified staff, on adequate and safe staffing levels, on to have good staff user ratios in childcare and elderly care, when you work with homeless, when you work with migrant workers, where it's about labor market integration of young people that have no school certificate, for example, all these issues, work integration more generally. So there is a common interest with the trade unions to have this also very well fixed. And to also have a possibility for the human rights and the social rights of the users to be realized and not make compromises on this. And as I've said, it's a service of general interest. So we are part of the welfare state, of the social protection schemes in this case. And the services pursue partly with economic means, but they pursue social objectives, social policy objectives. So there is this double logic. And we have obviously a very strong interest also to have the call for tenders and public contracts which are rewarded to reward high quality of the services, qualification of the workforce, and decent work. And in the contribution to the consultation that we will submit tomorrow, I bring again examples also from Gabi's home country, from Germany. So our members there, about 2 million workers in Germany in the not-for-profit sector in this context, say that still 8 years after the transposition of the directive, many contracting authorities still take the view that there is insufficient legal certainty and experience with socially responsible public procurement. So we are in favor of this. An important reason is a lack of an error culture there, and this has a detrimental effect not only on the procurement, but also on the projects that are implemented with procurement. What is demanded and procured in social services, where this applies, is not normally what is innovative or sustainable, but what is cheap and risk-free, and that is not what we would like. Instead of cost efficiency, many contracting authorities prioritize short-term cost-saving effects. Gabi said the same. And social service providers, they want to have qualified personnel, and those that have it and prioritize socially sustainable offers, they are withdrawing from the procurement market because their offer is not rewarded. High quality work is not necessarily rewarded if you go for the cheapest price. So from this general letter, I make some general points and some specific on social services. From this letter, obviously, and that's perhaps an answer to 2 or 3 of your questions, Estelle, we are very clear that the social clauses and the criteria, they have to remain, or they should stay, have to become mandatory, and they cannot be seen as discriminatory against economic operators, provided there are accommodations made for small and medium-sized enterprises. 89% of the social economy are small and medium-sized enterprises. 93 are even micro enterprises. So there is an issue of size also. So that's a clear first point. And then I think a reply to another question, make this most economically advantaged tender, the best price quality ratio, the default standard everywhere, but obviously also in a sector where the wage costs are a very important share of the whole cost and of what you would submit with a bid. And also obviously exclude abnormally low tenders from the bidding process. That's without any question, because in social services, low tenders are mostly an attack on the working conditions and on the pay conditions and on investment in training and all the other issues. So there is no question for this. I have seen that, Uni Europa issued a new survey, 6 countries, and they asked, what do Europeans want? So again, citizens' voice using taxpayers' money. And 65% of those that have been asked in 6 important European countries with the majority of the European population, if you count them together, want that public contracts are awarded based on price, quality, green and social criteria, as we. 72 want that public authorities prioritize companies with collective agreements. Same for us. Nearly 50% prioritize wages and working conditions that need to be prioritized in the criteria. Same for us. 2-3 words on the specific points for the social services sector. So we would suggest that, for example, the specificities of the social economy, of the not-for-profit sector, of services of general interest can also be reflected in the award criteria. If you are a good enterprise, if you abide to collective agreements, to working conditions, to environmental protection conditions, obviously that should be seen. And we combine economic activity with a social policy, a health policy, social housing, an employment, labor market inclusion policy objective. So that should get more points. In the special regime for social services, it's very clearly written at this Article 76.2 that member states, they should put in the public tenders these criteria like quality, continuity, accessibility, affordability, availability, comprehensiveness of the services, but also empowerment of the users and innovation. So that's what we also would like to see. And then the second sentence says, member states may also provide that the choice of the service provider shall be made on the basis of tenders presenting the best price ratio, quality ratio, and taking into account quality and sustainability criteria. We would say replace the may by should. It's not a may, it should happen. Then finally, the last point on this. So procurement is not the dominant modus vivendi in the field of social services because there are services of general interest. Normally you have authorization regimes, you have grants. So we would like to get a recognition with an interpretive communication, something like this, that alternative models to procurement also have to have the same value as procurement, because in our sector It's normally a partnership with local regional government. It's cooperation models. This needs to be that needs to be rewarded and not competition based on the price. So please see that we are in a part of services of general interest with all the conditions, with the pursuit of social policy objectives and all the other labor market inclusion, inclusiveness, accessibility, inclusive labor markets, for example. So that needs to be rewarded and not be a challenge. So last reflection on this is the discussion. Was a discussion organized by the E2C and the E2I, very well done on Monday. And again, we had a intervention from Austria, the Austrian local regional government, and that are our partners. So we fully understand that that's a question of size, as we said. So most municipalities are small in size. Social economy organizations, not-for-profit organizations, are smaller in size. So we need simpler rules, because otherwise smaller entities will not dare to take any additional criteria. And that was said on Monday also in this event of the E2C and the E2I. And it was brought up by many of the speakers on the panel, including Esther, Oliver, and also Niklas, that in a way there is this chilling effect. So the chilling effect, the fear of recourse to legal, to the courts. And that is what our members tell us since 10 years, that they would like to, but there is often an issue that the rules are too complicated, and out of the fear of recourses, they don't use the full range of this socially responsible criteria. A last issue linked to this size and also the capacity to take it into consideration in a way. So what I have seen, as you have said, I also do a little bit of research on this, on the Parliament study, but also in a current project going on that DG GROW even does with the social economy. The idea is to give better access to the social economy to public procurement. So we have said public procurement needs to be always, as the gold rule, socially responsible procurement. But what comes out there, I have been in training in 6 member states, between Belgium, Estonia, Cyprus, Malta, Bulgaria, Austria. So in all countries, that's linked to local government and social economy. People say, my municipal council says we want to do it. My mayor says we want to do it. So there is a political decision to go for quality criteria, to reward qualification, to reward that you work on inclusion, that you work on care, that you work on training, you want to support people to get back in the labor market, into society. So that is there. And then what happens, that was the example from the Province de Liège. So then the supervisory body, the Province de Liège, says, oh, nice, but you would have had cheaper offers. But why do you do this? We have austerity, you need to make savings, and the court of auditors. So the last point that I would like to make is that's from a real now 2 years of practical feedback why it's not happening. There's this chilling effect, but it's often not happening because the Commission has not given any guidance or even more to these supervisory bodies and to the Court of Audit, because what they do, these are the procurement technicians, and they look into the budget. Luckily, they protect our expenditure. They look how we use our taxes. That's correct. They should do it. They should fight against corruption, nepotism, for sure. It's not a question. But they are look into the formalities. They look in, and formality, it's easy. Lowest price is easy, no problem. That we can tick the box. Putting in issues around collective bargaining, collective agreements, quality of the service, qualification of the workforce, these other objectives. This is more complicated. So for me, the very important practical missing element is not only tailored guidance and support to the local authorities that are of good intention, most are of good intention, nearly all, and to support these local regional government organizations, associations, and to promote the partnership and cooperation mechanism, but to really address these supervisory bodies in the member states and to address this Court of Auditors. With this, I conclude. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you really for this first intervention. It shows very concrete highlight over this topic. I let now the floor to Professor Niklas Brun.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me this is a topic which I'm working on. I have been asked by the TUI to provide a working paper on how to promote collective bargaining in the context of public procurement, and I think this will be available not later than early April, this report. I think that I have some slides, so I hope now you can start showing the first slide. Go to the second one, I think. Is it, I don't know. You see it here, yeah. Okay, very good. So my starting point, of course, is that when we discuss this, we have to look at the present situation. And it's, as we know, the present legal regime is from 2014. The directives on public procurement were actually they were reformed at that time. And when it comes to social clauses, there is a very important Article 18.2, which actually say that member states shall use labor clauses and collective agreements in the context of public procurement. But this clause has been very differently understood and implemented in different member states. We see some member states which nothing happened after the 2014 reform. We saw other member states where there was a very important advancement, where there was actually legislation in place. And so this actually is one argument for further reform, that there is a need really to harmonize, because now it's a very different scheme applying in different member states. Then I think it's important to understand that public procurement is actually one of the best tools the public sector have to promote collective bargaining. And actually, with the minimum wage directive, the public authorities have an obligation to promote collective bargaining under EU law. And I think if we look at the present situation, we will even see a huge increase in public procurement. For if we think about the security sector and spending for defense and other things, there we will have a lot of public procurement. So my point is that it is many reasons to move from optional promotion to mandatory promotion of collective bargaining. And the present problem really is that there are not clear guidelines on how to promote collective bargaining, and this unclear situation. We can take the next slide. Please, next slide. It's yes, please. Thank you. The problem when we think about regulation of public procurement and collective bargaining is, of course, that the industrial relation systems in the European Union, in the member states, is very different. So we have very different systems. We have these erga omnes extension models, we have sectoral bargaining models, and we have states where collective agreements predominantly it's taking place on a company level. And then we have different mixed models which combine this in different ways, and we have minimum wage arrangements. And next slide, please. If this leads us to the conclusion that when we design a legal solution for this promotion of collective bargaining, we really have to take into account these different systems, and one size does not fit all. And it must be a legislative framework that is flexible enough for different labor relation models. And we also have to respect the principles of freedom of association. We cannot force, for instance, employers to join employers' confederations, or we can not force anyone to sign a collective agreement. We can do a lot of other things, but there are some limits which we have to be aware of. And then, of course, we also have to take into account the basic principles for public procurement, transparency, equal treatment, and so on. But there is actually room for significant simplification also of the present system, and I think that should be one part of the package when we go for mandatory collective bargaining or mandatory collective procurement. So next slide then, what should be done? And I have actually listed a 9-point agenda where I have some points for legal reform. And I am aware that this generous 7 minutes, which I got to present the agenda, is a little bit tricky. But they are now listed here on the slides, so I hope you can then look at the slides afterwards. And of course, the first thing is really to clarify this Article 18.2 very clearly, to include an obligation to apply collective agreements in the context of public procurement, and also clarify in which phases of the process these should be included. Already in the contract notice, and they should also be made obligatory performance conditions so that they are written into the final contract. Then we can go to the next slide, please. Then we should revise. I have here is a slight spelling error. It should be 55.4a. We should revise that in order to make clear that a contractor that has been in breach of the obligations, which we then introduce with the new 18.2, such a contractor should be excluded from future contracts in accordance with some principles which should apply for such exclusion. So there should be some sanctions for those who are not following the rules. And I also have here, when I thought about this, I even thought that it could even be possible to have a kind of official list of such tenderers and contractors that have been in grave breach of their obligations under the revised Article 18.2. There is in the present Public Procurement Directive, there is a list of, you can have some list of certain group of contractors, and I think such a list really would have a very positive effect when we think about half criminal and companies which based all their activities on social dumping. Next slide, please. Then I think that when it comes to award factor, and this is very important when we are speaking about company bargaining, the award factor, there should be given extra points for those tenders that can show that they apply a collective agreement, so that that you get extra points in that context. We also should clarify this concept which we have in the present legal regime, the requirement that this award criteria should be linked to the subject matter of the procurement. This is a quite unclear concept. I myself think that when we are dealing with contracts where labor is performed, where there is a lot of workers involved, then of course collective bargaining and wage conditions are linked to this contract and to the subject matter. So we can go to the next slide, please. Then I think we also can think of introducing national targets for increasing collective bargaining coverage in the context of public procurement. We actually have seen in the context of environmental public procurement that there can be some targets included, and that this would fit well in with the rules that we now have in the minimum wage directive. And then my colleague here already spoke about these abnormally low tenders. At present, there is a very heavy burden of proof when someone wants to exclude a tenderer due to the fact that the price is abnormally low. And I think it should be much easier. It should actually be the tenderer's task to show how is it possible that the tender can be abnormally low in spite of the fact that normal wage standard is applied. And finally, I think we need to discuss the question of adequate sanctions to be applied for failure to observe and apply the provisions of labor clauses when we have a public contract, and there of course should be in some cases withholding of contracts, but there might be other sanctions that are more proportionate. So I think there is a lot that can be done here if we want to achieve public procurement that is really promoting collective bargaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. So, thank you, Professor. I invite everybody to take note from this study, which is available on ETUC
yeah, it's forthcoming
site, because it's incoming.
It will be
yeah.
public
Okay.
quite soon.
Because it's very important, and it really answers to the question, why is collective bargaining the most important monetary criteria we are asking for. So thank you very much. I let the floor to Gabi now, and Esther will join us in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much also to our guest speakers. I mean, what do you want to add after these two presentations? But let me emphasize and take up some of the proposals and try to put it in a more broader picture. I mean, really, when you look at public procurement, we know that it's about 14% of European GDP. And then you discuss about, we said already, it's the money of mainly the citizens we are dealing with, about that this is 2 trillion euros each year if you add it in all member states. And I don't know about you, but I'm a very visual person. And I had to ask myself, okay, oh my God, how many zeros are 2 trillion euros? It's almost too much to imagine. And I can tell you it has 12 zeros. it is a huge amount of money. And imagine that you could take this huge amount of money to use it also to achieve the goals that Europe already has set. It's nothing that we are inventing new, but that we want to be directed to support the Green Deal, to support quality of work, to support inclusion here. And we know that this opportunity of the revision is therefore very important to address the failings that were presented here. And I think it also fits very well in this time, because I don't know if it was the same with you, but I listened carefully to the two speakers, and I heard very often the word simplification. And we all know that simplification now is the magic word for the European Commission. Everything has to be simpler. And I think here we have a very good opportunity to make it simpler, but also more effective in terms of delivering for citizens, for our societies, but also for a lot of companies on European level. And I have to say also for a lot of authorities, because indeed they don't want to do mistakes. They don't want to have very lengthy and expensive court trials if they are not sure that the criteria they use, that not a competitor will go to court and then they will have a lot of problems. This is why we think this initiative as a priority also in this legal field, this revision, and to really push here for a progressive reform here. Welcome, Esther. And so I would like to summarize this just to give some input for the debate, really with 3 words, and we call it the triple C. And the triple C means conditions, control, and consequences. I think that was your presentation, if I have to cut it very, very short here. And this is why we discuss and any legal proposals and empirical data is very important if you want to make a strong case and be successful. So it really means that we need a mandatory application of terms and conditions of collective bargaining, because that is the best guarantee for quality work whenever this is possible. And really that the application of collective agreements must be, and I repeat again, a mandatory positive award criteria for all tenders. And we already have heard some ways how this could be done. We have another point that in the debates in the S&D group plays a big role, and here we also have to see we need also legal support here, how these obligations can be extended to subcontractors. We really need here also work and support how we can do that. Additionally, really also that we can ensure joint and several liability throughout really the subcontracting chain, a debate we are doing and we want to link it here. And you said it very elaborate, how we can ensure that what we call the bad apples in the box can be exempted from receiving public money through public tenders, that we need sanctions, or as you put it, a sort of blacklist here, also that we want to link it with the topic of union busting and companies that disregard workers' rights. And we have seen it in practice in the transport sector, in the building sector, in so many sectors, that this is really still a business model. And for us, this is really a good case how we can show that simplification, simpler, clearer rules, but also creating legal certainty here is very important. And without that, it would not be possible to, in the end, really have a different practice than we have today in many member states. We also have member states that are already really advanced, really good. We have heard some in the ample committee, but in the majority really needs legal certainty. And also for us, it's a question everyone is talking about: competitiveness after simplification. That's the next thing. And I think also here, this can lead to a competitiveness the European way as we do it, if we really have here innovation, quality goods and services, fair prices, sustainability, and including good working conditions and fair wages. So for us, therefore, we want to use this opportunity really to fight here for a strong social dimension of European public procurement framework. And we want to make sure that taxpayers' money does not continue to support social dumping, exploitation, and unfair competition. And this is really our way of European competitiveness. And with this, I will stop and maybe hand over back to Estelle, because also Esther arrived, and that then we have time to open the debate.
Yes, thank you, Gabi. As you said before, to have a debate, I would like to warmly welcome Esther. We already talk about very important topic in this debate on the revision on public procurement directive, and first focus was on the social services, then over the collective bargaining as really mandatory criteria. Gabi took a little another view with a larger and broader view on the topic. So I let you maybe the last word before our debate today.
Okay. So I'm really, really sorry for being late, but we were just over signing the Social Dialogue Pact. And so there were the employers and Ursula von der Leyen, and I was aware that everything was running over and it was this and the other. And then I was saying there's some point at which all of these declarations and statements and promises have to be made real. And I think that's the way most working people feel at the moment, is that it has to start being some of it has to sometime become visible and real in everybody's working lives. And I think that with the public procurement, we really have an opportunity to achieve a tangible difference for many, many workers. And that's why this discussion is so important to us. The only way that you really have dignity at work is when you can join together with your workmates and bargain with the employer. That's the only way you get the power in the relationship to have the type of dignity that all of us want to have. None of us want to, be under. None of us want to work in a relationship where the boss says jump and you say how high, and that's the only thing you're allowed to say. None of us want that. So all of us want to be able to join the union and bargain for a fair wage and a decent day, and the dignity of having a negotiated collective agreement with your trade union. That's why the work that you're all doing is so important. Now, I'm going to be super short because I'll have a chance to come in at the end, but also because I've seen so many of the trade unions who have been so active on this in the audience. I see Oliver Rotig and Union Europa, who I'm sure will tell us a bit about their study that shows very, very clearly that people want this. I see also the unions from Sweden. I see some from EPSU as well. So there's lots of trade unions here who can speak much more, say, on the ground of what a difference this would be. I'm also really happy that you invited Nicholas, because Nicholas does something magic. He busts the myth that we can't do this, busts the myth that it's against ILO conventions, busts the myth that this is not possible, and busts the myth that I know the employers are walking around the town at the moment saying, which is that this is contrary to the right of employers not to bargain, which is news to me that there was such a right. But it will be interesting to hear what people's concerns and what people's questions are, and I'd be very happy, Estelle, but to thank you and Gabby so much for advocating for this, for championing this, for leading on this, and then also we'll soon be celebrating your delivering this. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Esther, for for your support, because it's really kind of reciprocity also. So maybe I will let now the floor to the room and to your question. So I've just already one there. You can and maybe present you first and yeah.
Slavica Ozelac, European Federation of Building and Woodworkers. I would like to make a comment and a suggestion. Some of you here in the room already have heard what I will say, because this is now the third event on public procurement this week. But it's good that we meet that often and to discuss this also with a larger audience. I would like to recall that back in 2014, we were quite happy about the revision of the Public Procurement Directive. So when I was reading the documents from the past and also from ETUC, so the spirit was very, very positive that these new directives will go into a right direction. And then, so how and why did it turn wrong? I hear that we want mandatory social clauses, but this is probably not so much the issue, because if you read the text, and Niklas was also highlighting it, that it says shall, so public authorities shall apply measures, phone is ringing, measures to apply social and labor law and also collective agreements. So it's maybe not that. And when I was reading the guide of the Commission on how to procure more social, in the introduction it says, so I will read out, as a public buyer, you can consider social objectives throughout the entire procurement process, and here it comes, provided these are non-discriminatory to the companies and linked to the subject matter of the contract. Niklas already mentioned the subject matter principle, that this is tricky. So what I can see, I'm not a legal expert, but I can see that in this not bad text directive, there is a clause which can, bypass this obligation of applying. So we should tackle these clauses how that this should not be bypassed anymore. And here my proposals for a revised public procurement directive. And I would like to make reference to what Gabi was saying on simplification. This is the spirit in which we are now, and the Commission is very keen on that. Here, a proposal from the construction side, what we can simplify, and Gabi mentioned also the problem of subcontracting. So in our sector, collective agreements are not that much an issue. It's simply that in a long subcontracting chain of X subcontractors, you can't control any collective agreement anymore and can't be sure that collective agreements exist there. So our proposal is to limit the change up to 2 layers and stop. So it's much more easier. You will have an overview who's on the construction side, and you need less inspectors to inspect these subcontracting companies. Voila, so here a very concrete proposal to make it so not only it should not only be about controlling the subcontracting chain, it should be a limit. So after 2 layers and stop. And in some countries this is the case. There is a law on that, so it's possible legally. And the last suggestion, what we think is a good tool, also it comes with simplification, is some kind of accreditation system, so some kind of a white list of companies, so that they are screened and checked by a higher and bigger authority, so that smaller entities in public authority have easy access to this kind of wide list and know immediately, okay, if I choose one of the companies from this list, I'm fine. And a small public authority of maybe 1 or 2 people does not need to go and control a large number of bidders. That's all. Sorry to be a bit long.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I will take the 4 questions that I've seen at the moment, because there is a second panel, and maybe the other people will have the opportunity also to ask their question for the second panel, and maybe shorter question if it's possible, because I let the other answer after. Yeah.
Thank you. Oliver Rötig from Uni Europa, and Matthias was mentioning already our survey we brought out. So what the clear message is, there is support among the population, and of course you are elected by the population. So I think the European Parliament should heed this, and not only the people who are in this room from the S&D, but many others as well when I look at the majority. And from the trade union side, I mean, that is also the message we can bring. And we heard the construction workers, we heard Esther. We are for this as well. And I always give the example of my organization. When we started with our campaign, No Public Contract Without Collective Agreement in 2021, I managed in 2 weeks to get all my unions together saying, yes, we want this. And normally, unions take a long time to come up to a position. So this is absolutely clear. This is what we want. And picking up on Gabi, my visualizing the impact that public procurement has, it's 5,300 euros per inhabitant of Europe, of the European Union every year. So that's a lot of money for many people. So we should make sure that, that we leverage this. And Niklas was really giving a good outline what can be done. Very easy from our experience is we just want to have a box which basically says, do you have a collective agreement or not? And you tick it, and if you say no, you don't get any brownie points, and if you say yes, you get brownie points, which makes it easier for you to get the contract. The key point for the whole thing is we have a storyline by the European Commission, by employers, which says we are discriminatory. If we ask for a social Europe for social condition. It's the other way around. I mean, it's totally unacceptable that people who undermine other companies, who undermine working conditions, good services in our society, basically get a contract, basically hurt us all, and then really shout into the round that they are actually the ones who get hurt when we want to rectify it. Thank you.
Hi.
Johan.
I'll be very honest, it's not a question, so I'm going to make a point, but I'll be doing it in 2 minutes. So is that okay? My name is Pablo. I work for the European Federation of Public Services Unions. So we organize the workers in the public administration that actually do the tendering. And as social partners also for the local and regional government, we also have this feeling from our employers in that field, although we also do health and social service and so on, but very specifically on the municipal and regional level, something that Matthias was saying, there is a will, but there is a strong constraint in many places, particularly when cities are in debt. And let's face it, many, if not most cities in Europe are not flamboyant in money. So they are under pressure to actually be pushed to the lowest bidder. Now, these are internal market rules, what we are discussing. This was historically sitting in IMCO for a reason. And it's good that it's moving away from that. I'm nothing against IMCO people here, sorry, but there has to be, well, there is a link between this moving away and elements such as the strategic autonomy that the Commission is actually starting to talk, such as by European. So for us and for our also social partners, the idea is a very old idea in a way of promoting the local economy and promoting regional development is something that has to be really entrenched. And there are mechanisms to do that. I mean, Slavis was saying white lists. For example, taking the French example, if you are a company of what the French call l'économie sociale et solidaire, so the social economy for sake of argument, you're already registered in a place. So you should already have these brownie points. But the other issue that we believe has to be entrenched and ingrained in a higher way is through taxation and transparency. In order to ensure that those that promote the local economy and pay taxes locally do actually get extra points when they try to do that. And that is the sort of, I mean, we're still at the beginning of the legislative process, but this fast-track way to actually promote those that actually pay the fair dues. And let's face it, here the burden of proof has to be in the bigger companies who do tax evasion, not on the small company locally who is a cooperative of 10 people. So I think that is something, and it's been 3 minutes, not 2, but something that we should look into. Thank you.
Thank you. And I let the floor to Johan. Normally, in the plenary, we have just 1 minute, so I let you the floor for 1 minute.
I will also, contradictory to the plenary, try to make a question, actually.
Thank you.
First, very much thank you to all the panelists, Swedish member of the Socialist Group. And I mean, we will have this fight together, the unions and our group, for sure. And I mean, from the speakers, from UNI, from the construction union to EPSI, I think we can all agree on the demands being put forward. But perhaps since Niklas is here as well, a more technical issue, because at least in Sweden, we are facing a problem, I think, in the legal debate, that it seems like we are in a situation where we can put specific demands on the micro level, in this one single specific public procurement, like limiting subcontracting. I'm on the point that this is allowed, we should do it, we should go forward, but the legal discussion back home is that, yes, you can do it in the individual procurement, but there would be an infringement of EU law if we said that in general, in our national public procurement law, we should limit it to 2 levels of subcontracting. This is one example. But is there something in the directive that needs to be changed in order for the national level to do this general social provisions, not just on on collective agreement? I think you have outlined perfectly how that could be done, but also on these flanking measures to get rid of companies. Well, this is one example, limiting subcontracting, but you might find other ways as well. Is this something in the directive that needs to be changed to open this possibility for member states?
Thank you, Johan. It was more consideration or remarks and just a question. So I let you maybe pick the consideration or remark that are the more important for you, and maybe let's begin with Nicolas.
No, I think
Micro.
So this was the last question was. It's not so easy to answer on a general level, but it is, of course, if we think about really about simplification in this context, I mean we need to get rid of this approach that you say that in every case you have to try to make a proportionality test, and you have to go through all circumstances, and then you can decide. I think that also that we could think a little bit of what has happened in public procurement is that it has been a huge business for lawyers, because in all countries, member states, we have legal procedures, a huge amount. When a company loses a competition, they go to court and they say that yes, this, and we have a legal expertise going for this. I think it would be a good idea to make some little study of how much cost is involved in this, if we think about simplification and why not competitiveness. Should there be a possibility to bring every little case to court, or what should be the procedure? I think I mean this is one part of the problem, that it has been built in this kind of possibility to make it costly and risky, and I think that one of the goals here could be that we try to reduce this kind of aspect of the problem. But I mean I don't have the key solution immediately, but I think we could think about different measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthias?
No, only one thought, taking up also what I think the Swedish member now of the parliament has said and what Pablo from EPSO has said, for which organization indeed I have worked also earlier. It's this issue around, also the local level, so some leeway to have and buying local, but not to say, we don't want competition or we are shying away, but local also in the social economy means that you have their investment also in workplaces that cannot be shipped abroad. This is really sustainable development also arranged for employment, and it links it to the inclusion of those that need support, as I say, for training, care, support, guidance, all these other on the labor market into the society. So to think in this line on some leeway, on more flexibility, because also in this training with the social economy, there were discussions to which extent the trainers can say that there is this leeway for buying social, and that should not happen. And not, as I say, not to ignore all competition logics, but to encourage sustainable employment, sustainable development models, local, that is social economy, that's not for-profit sector, that encourage this with procurement for all the reasons Gabi and many others have said. So this, I would also try to look into this. And the last point is, there is a study done by the Dutch Ministry for Welfare Services about from 2020. And in the social services sector, there is 0.3% of cross-border procurement, if at all. If you look to all contracts, 0.0. So our argument is, why the hell should policy be developed that looks to 0% of the reality in a sector? So there is no risk for distortion of the internal market in social services if it's 0.0. Commission, show us, please, the other sector where you regulate, and you regulate on the basis of 0.2% of the reality. You need to regulate on the basis of 90.9% of the reality, and this is not cross-border. So there is competition in a country, all good, fine, fair competition, but please regulate there where we need to regulate in line of simplification, and where there are real risks is in our sector, in the social economy. This is other economic model that is not on expansion and is not on creating distortions in the internal market. Please take this into account.
Thank you. As you said, the most important word are simplification, but also win-win at every level, and surely at the local level. I let the floor to Gabi, and then to Esther, and to let the floor to the second panel. And maybe to mention that we are a lot in this room, but there is also 250 persons following us through the online. Thank you.
I have a lot of sympathy for how we ended up where we are, which is this, this thing of, why did you think everything was fixed way back in 2014? Like why did you think shall was the solution? Is there a danger that we get fooled a second time? Isn't that the heart of what your question is? So every time we're over here looking for an improvement in legislation or new legislation, every single battle is every single word, and you say yes, but, maybe, but, if, but, no, buts, only if, but, and that's just the reality of the struggle that we will be in again this time, which is why I think the absolute emphasis on keeping it super, super simple, which I will do, and I'll be super fast because I'm going to keep it super, super simple, is exactly what Oliver says. The question, do you have a collective agreement? Yes, no. And that needs to be a mandatory question, because as soon as you bring voluntariness into it, that's when you start getting the complexity. Voluntariness breeds complexity, because then you have to give all of the thinking environment in which has to be thought about. So the more mandatory the provision, the clearer and more explicit it can be. And then we'll just have to fight it out and struggle it out. But I think there is a wind blowing behind us, in particular for the buy European, buy local, in lots of different arenas for lots of different reasons. I think that the calls for investment and for member states to make money available, whether it's for the transition or all of the other difficulties that we're facing, that all of that will only have public support if it's very clear that this is not money going to the top people, the top 5 people in the world, but that this is actually going to go back into the pockets of working people through them being able to collectively bargain on their wages. And as Pablo says, on fair taxes and everything else. So people expect more from public procurement than they ever did before. I think they're entitled to expect it. I'm just want to say the reason I made my way to be here on purpose is not because I have much to say, but to absolutely demonstrate the united trade union commitment behind this demand. And then also to say it can be done simply. We don't need to overly complicate it. But look, we'll be together on that journey for the amendments and the ideas and the opinions and everything else. But really want to thank Estelle and Gabby for all of your leadership already on this and for having this event and for giving an opportunity to trade unions to include our demands as your demands.
Thank you, Esther. I will really thank all the panelists and our experts, and give the floor immediately to the second part of the debate. But the link is clear, and with the competitiveness and the importance also for the revision for the SMEs. So thank you very much, and see you.
So I invite all the distinguished guests and speakers for the second panel, and my message also is here. We are very happy to have Laura Ballarin, our S&D IMCO coordinator, and we know that the main competences is with you, my dear Laura. So also a lot of the burden. But as you can see, here is a room full dedicated, and Laura will be the moderator of the second panel, and will also introduce all the distinguished guests that we have here. And to lose no time, I will immediately give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you so much, colleagues. It's a full room, and I think it shows the high interest that this topic raises in a year of reflections towards the proposal of the Commission for the revision of this directive. Before I give the floor to this high-level panel, and thank you all of them to join us, I would like to introduce the discussion by saying that we must leverage public procurement as a strategic tool to lead the way for a more competitive Europe that focuses, among others, on stimulating the participation of SMEs to lead the transition to a greener and more self-sufficient Europe. As it has been said by Gabby before, and we remember a lot this figure, accounting for nearly 14% of the EU GDP, public procurement is a massive economic instrument that gives us power and also responsibility to drive our European economy towards a more green, fair and competitive model. In this regard, Letta report underlines the need to enhance SMEs' participation in public procurement in order to allow and facilitate them to be part of the EU ambitions for digital and green transformation. SMEs are the backbone of Europe's economy, driving innovation and employment, supporting their participation also by tailored attenuation and some simplification. We will strengthen European industrial base and economic sovereignty, as well as the transition towards sustainability. And we consider this by local and proximity-based criteria also with them. But public procurement is not only about protecting environment, it's also about protecting our Europe's strategic autonomy. We saw that during the pandemic, so we have now to embed the sustainability criteria into public procurement process while fostering local industries, reducing especially our dependencies on external suppliers. So I will try to conclude because we are here to listen our panelists. So I will open the floor to, first of all, them to further the discussion in the public procurement directive and strengthening, as we said, the SMEs' economic autonomy and the social and green criteria. First of all, I would like to ask our colleague, Pierre Joubert, who is, as you know, our shadow rapporteur for the own initiative report in public procurement in IMCO. And I would like to ask you, Pierre, how would you describe the vision and main ambitions of our group on the forthcoming revision of the directive?
Merci, Laura. Je vais parler en français, ce sera plus simple et plus clair. Merci, merci d'abord à toutes et à tous de votre présence. Je suis très heureux de l'opportunité de discuter avec vous et devant vous de l'avenir des marchés publics. J'ai eu l'occasion de rencontrer un certain nombre d'entre vous dans le cadre de ma mission de shadow rapporteur pour notre groupe SND. Et nous sommes dans un moment qui est un moment d'importance pour notre économie européenne si nous voulons qu'elle soit durable, dynamique et résiliente. Avant de rentrer précisément dans le vif du sujet et répondre à la question que tu me posais, Laura, je veux d'abord appuyer et redire ce qui a été la discussion précédente sur les besoins de critères sociaux obligatoires dans la commande publique pour garantir des emplois de qualité, des salaires qui permettent de vivre dignement et des conditions de travail décentes. Il est aujourd'hui essentiel que les salariés, que les hommes et les femmes qui sont les travailleurs soient au centre et au cœur de la prochaine réforme des marchés publics et nous nous battrons au niveau du groupe SND pour cela. Pour revenir précisément sur notre débat et notre sujet de ce panel, nous sommes et nous intervenons aujourd'hui dans ce débat dans un moment extrêmement particulier à l'échelle du monde. Nous vivons évidemment un moment de bascule depuis plusieurs semaines et depuis plusieurs jours. Une forme d'accélération est en train d'être vécue sous nos yeux. L'élection de Donald Trump aux États-Unis, l'agressivité économique de la Chine, la guerre aux portes de l'Europe et notre dépendance énergétique mettent à mal nos entreprises, affectent notre compétitivité et nous imposent à nous, Européens, une reprise en main de nos intérêts. Ces nouvelles dynamiques s'imposent à nous au moment où le changement climatique s'aggrave et où ces effets deviennent de plus en plus conséquents, où les phénomènes météorologiques sont extrêmes, on l'a vécu encore ces derniers mois en Espagne notamment, où la montée du niveau des mers est inquiétante, où la perte de la biodiversité devient une réalité du quotidien. Aujourd'hui, la Commission européenne et la présidente de la Commission veulent répondre par un grand choc de simplification. Gabi l'a dit avant moi dans le premier panel, c'est désormais un mot fourre-tout. Simplification. Mais que veut donc dire ce mot qui traduit surtout un grand projet pour l'instant de ce que nous envoyons, de déréglementation pour jeter nos valeurs par-dessus bord dans une espèce de course folle avec des puissances autocratiques devenues les reines d'un échiquier économique mondial. Nous considérons, et je considère qu'il s'agit d'une erreur stratégique car cette dérégulation revient sur des engagements très clairs, ça a été dit précédemment, nuit à la clarté des orientations économiques et stratégiques que nous devons fixer. Et même si des entreprises feront quelques économies sur leurs obligations de reporting, cette simplification ne crée en réalité aucune opportunité économique. Et dans les auditions et les rencontres que j'ai pu faire avec un certain nombre d'entre vous, vous le faites d'ailleurs remarquer. D'ailleurs, ça ne créera aucune condition de marché stimulante, ni pour l'innovation, ni pour la transition écologique. Et en réalité, ça ira à l'inverse des règles de compétitivité, nouveau mot là aussi très en vogue en ce moment. Au cours du mandat précédent, nous nous sommes fixés ici dans ce Parlement des objectifs ambitieux, grâce par exemple au Green Deal qui aujourd'hui est menacé. Notre mandat en cours doit maintenir ces objectifs et aider toutes les parties prenantes à les atteindre. Des investissements publics et privés ont d'ailleurs déjà été effectués pour la transition verte et nous devons continuer à pousser dans ce sens. C'est dans cette perspective que nous voulons porter une réforme ambitieuse des marchés publics. Laura l'a dit avant moi, la commande publique est un levier extrêmement important, notamment pour déployer notre économie verte et créer des opportunités pour nos entreprises porteuses de tels projets. Avec plus de 14% du produit intérieur brut européen. La commande publique peut créer un niveau de demande propre et permettre des projets durables et innovants et aussi des financements nouveaux. Je veux d'ailleurs saluer sur ce point les recommandations des rapports Draghi et l'État qui recommandent l'utilisation de la commande publique pour favoriser des projets innovants et durables pour l'environnement. Pour y parvenir, nous souhaitons que la prochaine réforme des marchés publics contienne, en plus des critères sociaux, ça a été dit, des critères environnementaux obligatoires. Le cadre actuel laisse ces critères optionnels, mais après 10 ans d'application, il est devenu évident que cette approche est aujourd'hui inopérante. Les critères environnementaux ont été sous-utilisés et je considère que le seul caractère obligatoire de tels critères sera à même de corriger cette tendance. En intégrant des critères environnementaux obligatoires dans nos marchés publics, nous créerons alors une demande pour l'innovation verte. Les entreprises seront ainsi incitées à développer des solutions plus durables, à réduire leur empreinte carbone et à adopter des pratiques respectueuses de l'environnement. Cette dynamique stimulera alors la recherche et le développement en renforçant ainsi le leadership de l'Europe sur la scène mondiale. Nous avons en Europe toujours été à la pointe de l'innovation et de la durabilité. En imposant des critères environnementaux obligatoires, nous créerons un marché intérieur où les entreprises les plus vertueuses pourront ainsi prospérer. Cela enverra, je le crois, un signal extrêmement fort aux investisseurs et aux consommateurs. L'Europe est le berceau des technologies propres et des pratiques durables. Cette réputation attirera des capitaux et renforcera là aussi notre compétitivité à l'échelle mondiale. C'est également un engagement citoyen très fort. Nos citoyens sont de plus en plus conscients des enjeux environnementaux et veulent avoir une consommation plus durable. Ils attendent de leurs institutions qu'elles prennent des mesures concrètes et ambitieuses. En intégrant ces critères environnementaux dans nos marchés, nous répondrons à cette attente et renforcerons alors les liens de confiance avec les citoyens. Fixer des critères environnementaux clairs, contraignants, mais peut-être non pénalisants, est un objectif essentiel de la prochaine réforme. Le deuxième point que je souhaite souligner comme objectif majeur de cette future réforme et qui peut être atteint également grâce aux critères sociaux et environnementaux. Je veux parler de la commande publique en soutien à la résilience de notre économie pour avoir et permettre une autonomie stratégique. Cela peut se faire en introduisant notamment une préférence européenne, avec notamment une exigence de production locale, une production en Europe, qui permettrait de soutenir nos petites et moyennes entreprises et nos industries européennes mises en difficulté de manière extrêmement grave par une concurrence extérieure déloyale. Cette préférence européenne peut prendre plusieurs formes et peut par exemple être soutenue par les critères sociaux et environnementaux obligatoires que nous défendons, car il permettrait d'éviter de sous-traiter cette production dans des conditions inconnues hors d'Europe. Plus que cela, dans le contexte géopolitique que je décrivais précédemment, il est urgent de préparer notre autonomie stratégique dans certains pans de notre industrie pour ne pas se retrouver collectivement à la merci de puissances étrangères et pour, dans certains domaines, préserver, voire construire une souveraineté dont le laisser-faire libéral avait pu nous priver. Je pense par exemple à la souveraineté dans le domaine numérique ou encore dans le domaine de la sécurité et de la défense. Ces domaines restent largement à définir. Là encore, l'idée est de donner du poids à cette valeur ajoutée européenne par rapport à la simple considération, et ça a été dit dans le panel précédent, mais c'est extrêmement important, par rapport à la simple considération du seul critère prix. Dans le cadre des stratégies d'ensemble, il faudra aussi avoir un regard attentif, et nous l'avons au groupe SND, sur la situation des très petites entreprises et des petites et moyennes entreprises pour qu'elles ne se retrouvent pas exclues de ces marchés. Le rapport, et j'en termine, de la Cour des comptes européenne démontre que leur participation est encore trop faible et gâche malheureusement des opportunités de développement pour ces acteurs. Nous devons donc réfléchir collectivement à la meilleure façon de les inclure, mais certaines idées comme l'allotissement, c'est-à-dire la division des lots, pour élargir les bénéficiaires peut être une piste intéressante qu'un certain nombre d'entre vous m'ont soulevé. Vous l'aurez compris, les marchés sont une opportunité conséquente à ne pas négliger, mais il convient et ce sera un grand débat entre les différentes familles politiques de ce Parlement, d'orienter cette commande publique pour qu'elle serve un modèle vertueux et porteur d'avenir. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much. Pierre, I think you touch many of the issues, the priorities for the S&D group in this very important negotiation, which won't be easy, we know, but it's of high importance for businesses and citizens. And now I will give the floor to Jai Krishna, who is a Senior Policy Officer for Industrial Production at the European Environmental Bureau. From your perspective, Jan, what would be the main challenges of the next reform of the directive concerning sustainability and climate change?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting the European Environment Bureau for this hearing. My name is Jai Krishna. I work with the industry team, and we have a presentation. It's fine. I like to come straight to the point because I think we have less time. It's okay. So I like to come straight to the point, and I'm waiting for the slides to come. Anyway, so we have a few environmental issues, and in the sense there are some obstacles in the procurement directive, and I like to say that we're not the experts on procurement, and having heard the first one session, I feel there are a lot of other issues which needs to be addressed and a lot of simplification needs to be done, but we're not from that perspective. We're coming purely from how to achieve lead markets, how to make industrial decarbonization accelerate in Europe. So first barrier we find is, I think the slides are a bit off order, so maybe I'll just speak. The first thing we identify is that the strategic procurement is not mandatory. Can you go to slide number 4, please? Thank you. So that picture is what I think I see from outside, from a procurement authority's point of view. So we have 3 options, sometimes 4, because we need to also include social and environmental criteria, but we have a straightforward option, that is price. There is no denying that price is one of the straightforward ways of measuring a value of a product, but it's too straightforward. And what other options do the procurement authorities have? We have, thank you. We have a best price to quality ratio, but there is no way of understanding how could the quality be decided. There's a cost effectiveness which requires tools such as life cycle costing, but there are so many methodologies and it's not clear. There is no EU-wide harmonized methodology. And the burden of proving those harmonized methodologies, verifiable objective falls on the procurement authority. So one of the things that really stops is if you see this route and you have 3 complications, three ways, and one is straightforward and we just have so many other options, I think the issue is that it's not surprising that its straightforward option is much preferred. And this is what is coming from the European Court of Auditors. There's a majority of lowest price options being chosen, with some countries having more than 80% of lowest price options being chosen by procurement. The other issue is, I think, also been discussed very well, but I do have a slide later for that. It's on the subject matter link. And I'll also point out that the quality issue in the best price to quality can be addressed only by harmonized technical specifications or criteria coming from sectoral legislations. But as we know, most of the sectoral legislations will take a few years to give such standards. There's always this question which comes again that, okay, so if there are no technical specifications, and why should a procurement do anything more than what is available in the market? The truth is there are a lot of products in the market, but there is no way to find them, and there is no way to identify them, and they're not coming up. So lastly, the eco-labels, which are one of the best, top 10% of the best products of many product categories, still can't be effectively used because Article 43 of the directive says you need to use equivalent labels. Now, I can ask for an equivalent label. It's fair because there are so many eco-labels across the EU, but to assess an equivalent label is not going to be possible for a contracting authority. The minute an equivalent label is put up and someone offers an equivalent label which is not the national labels, then it has to be verified. So a lot of things really stop the way to go forward, and the easiest way is usually preferred. I'd like to move to the next slide, which just shows you an idea of, this is from the Netherlands. I'm actually thankful that the government of Netherlands did this elaborate analysis, because such analysis is quite difficult, and it covers all the procurement. All the procurement of Netherlands is 85 billion euros. Now, can it be really linked to strategic lead markets? No, if you look at the sectors, you have construction, you have transport and energy, which is all high. And if you look at the right side, if you look at that's the relative climate footprint, that is how much greenhouse gas emissions are being emitted per euro of procurement that is happening. In that, you can see that energy is quite high. It's obvious, because as long as fossil fuels are there, there will be high greenhouse gas emissions on energy, but that's acceptable. Construction, machinery, transport and mobility, and electronics and telecommunications are on the top 5. So there is a lot of cutting edge technologies which are waiting to be used here on construction. There's a lot of hard to abate sectors with emission intensive industrial products which can be used in strategic procurement, and this is a way of doing it. Also, I'd like to point out that the analysis just used 2 sources. First is the material flow data from economic accounts, and the second one is procurement spending, clearly segregated by the CPV codes. So those 2 things are required to do this analysis, but that's just a thing. Can you move to the next slide, please? So I'd like to ask, why can't procurement have a clear goal or a target? It's not surprising to have goals or targets. So we do have the Paris Agreement, we do have the European Union agreeing to a net zero goal by 2050, and we even have a sub-target of 40% by 2040. But so can procurement aim for net zero targets is the question. If you go back to the route map I showed you, it's clear that the too many options are actually the complication why it's complicated. It could be simpler if you have most clear options and leave most of the exemptions where you can address price-only criteria and all the stuff, instead the 3 options. Back to the point, can it really help increase circular material use rate? Now, the circular material use rate is a specific indicator that has been used by the 8th Environment Action Program, and it's well established and is measured at member state level. So can it be done? And it can be done, and it's already established in the Clean Industrial Deal, where the package says that it could be doubled, or 23% is the expectation by 2030. Likewise, can it also have environmentally and socially responsible goals? This is a part we are really finding it difficult to incorporate, because it's just difficult to measure for us as an environmental organization. But I think we really need to have this as a goal. It could be a growth in share of how much contracts we have with the environmental social conditionalities, but it has to be inside. The answers are right there. You can also see that 11% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the EU is from procurement, and 25% of the construction sector is covered by procurement. So there's a big significant part procurement can play here. Likewise, I'll also like to point out that this procurement can be made a bit more targeted using just the common procurement vocabulary codes, which are dedicated and useful for procurement. And some of this, the question about administrative burden, it can be solved if there are more efforts put on how to get data without really making every authority report on every procurement in the entire EU. I'd like to move to the next slide, please. So again, this has been touched. It's not surprising. It's a common problem across many environmental and social issues. It's across the directive in many places. It has a chilling effect on contracting authorities. It's been said by many. Thank you. So the question I want to really make is that asking for a third-party verified Paris Agreement compliant transition plan is for an economic operator for a product or service is not the same as asking for, do you have a low carbon product? But is it actually too much to ask? Because it's true that I come from a very industrial point of view, but I see the Industrial Emissions Directive, Corporate Sustainability Directives have action plans, transition plans being demanded by economic operators, installations. So it's not really off the mark for a procurement authority to be ambitious and ask these things. But this is a big factor. I'd like to also flip to the last slide. I think this is a big factor, but I don't know how to touch about it because it's such a complicated factor. And if you look at, no, not the last one, sorry. It's been touched upon for 20 years. We have seen that thresholds are a difficult complication, but it also have to be remembered that 70% of all procurement data is just not available for anyone to make informed policy analysis. Also understanding that this is linked to the global procurement thresholds, and it's just a bit difficult to understand why should a non-EU company and an EU company have the same threshold. It needs to be separated. It's been lowered or not is a different question, but it has to be linked. Yeah, I think these are a few points. I have more points in the presentation. You can always look at it later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, but we are running out of time. We have also 2 more speakers, really interesting, and I'm sure that you can share the presentations with those who are interested in all this data. And now I will give the floor to Miguel Benito Lopez, Director of Administrative Procurement Coordination Services at Barcelona City Council, who I must recall, I think he's the only panelist who is a representative of the public administration, so your insights are very important for us because it's really crucial to understand the other side. And in this case, I would like to, and you have a long experience with public procurement in Barcelona. Miguel, I would like to ask you, what would you expect from the perspective of cities like Barcelona, which have a budget of 1,300 million euros, which is not something little, expect from this European reform for public procurement in general, and how the S&D group can enrich the debate? Thank you.
Bueno, gracias por invitarme. Me expresaré en castellano, que es más fácil, y para hacerlo de forma resumida, ¿qué esperamos? Esperamos sobre todo una mayor seguridad jurídica. Miren ustedes, una cosa muy fácil. Nosotros no compramos productos o servicios. Compramos y comparamos ciclos de producción y sistemas de producción. Y no tenemos en cuenta, porque la norma no nos da herramientas, las externalidades negativas y positivas que se generan en cada ciclo de producción. Hemos hablado, por ejemplo, lo que provoca la externalización en subcontratistas. También podemos hablar, por ejemplo, que provoca condiciones sociales o laborales ínfimas y las externalidades que provoca eso en el sistema también público de pensiones y sanitarias. Pero no hay manera, no hay un estudio que podamos compararlo para poder introducirlo como un criterio de adjudicación. Y nuestra propuesta o deseo sería que todo esto estuviera ya en un reglamento de la Unión Europea y que fuera fácilmente comparar sistemas de producción con externalidades negativas y positivas en todos los ámbitos, en el ámbito social, ambiental y de innovación. Hemos avanzado muchísimo en el ambiental, pero nos quedamos muy cortos en el social y el de innovación. No generamos concurrencia ni generamos tampoco la competencia entre empresas porque somos incapaces de poder comparar y valorar ciclos de producción. Si a un ciudadano le podemos decir que su euro invertido, aunque sea más caro el producto, realmente ahorra recursos públicos en otros ámbitos, como social, sanitario, tendríamos una gran herramienta y una gran fuerza de convencimiento para derrotar, en cierta manera, a esos órganos fiscalizadores que solo miran el componente económico. Porque el valor total de la suma de comparar un sistema productivo con otro, al final da un resultado más óptimo. Eso sería posible a partir de un reglamento europeo, a partir también de unos indicadores para que pudieran medirse esos objetivos. Sería también deseable que todos los Estados miembros utilizáramos el mismo modelo de pliego o estandarizáramos modelos de pliego con esos criterios de adjudicación basados en estas métricas y de tal manera que los operadores jurídicos fuera mucho más fácil poderlos imponer en un pliego y fuera mucho más pacífico también y bajara la conflictividad y la dilación y pérdida de tiempo que tenemos en la elaboración de estos pliegos. Tardamos aproximadamente 9 meses en adjudicar un contrato de promedio de 200.000 euros. No es normal. No es normal cuando ya tenemos un mercado único y tenemos una posibilidad de medir estos sistemas de producción y compararlos y, por tanto, poner y primar aquellos criterios de adjudicación que reduzcan externalidades negativas y maximicen externalidades positivas. Pero para ello es necesario hacer estas métricas, es necesario hacer estos estudios, es necesario convencer también a estos que dicen que hay que simplificar, porque esta es la mayor simplificación que vamos a hacerles. Tener métricas y tener documentos estandarizados, informes estandarizados, de tal manera que todo es pacífico. Ya no se va a impugnar un pliego, se va a impugnar un reglamento. ¿Seremos capaces, alguno, de impugnar un reglamento? Ninguno sería capaz de impugnar un reglamento a priori. Pero para eso hay que hacer este esfuerzo. Y nosotros hemos visto que las directivas, aunque se le puede hacer mucha crítica, han hecho que ahora estemos aquí, que ahora estemos en el momento de exigir que pasamos de la voluntariedad a establecer métricas comunes y a industrializar, si se me quiere decir, la palabra, la elaboración y aprobación de pliegos de contratación. Ese para mí sería el mejor deseo. Y evidentemente habrá que ver quién es el que introduce esos pliegos, quién es el que valora esos pliegos, quién valora esos criterios de adjudicación de forma homogénea para todos los Estados miembros y que luego cada operador jurídico, en función de cada contrato, seleccione aquellos que realmente le es más útil para aquella contratación o aquella licitación. Y, por tanto, daremos un margen de seguridad jurídica casi del 90%, por decir de alguna manera, a los operadores que ahora estamos, en cierta manera, sufriendo y que es lo que anteriormente han dicho en los anteriores panelistas. Compartimos la mayoría de observaciones, la inseguridad jurídica y la dificultad a veces de introducir estos criterios. Y simplemente yo creo que este sería el camino a seguir, intentar establecer estas métricas para poder incorporar criterios de adjudicación que sean, en cierta manera, jurídicamente inimpugnables. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Miguel, por una explicación muy concreta y también basada en vuestra experiencia de muchos años de gestionar muchos contratos públicos y por eso era tan importante tu perspectiva y espero que nos dé tiempo para al menos un par de preguntas por si alguien quiere dirigir alguna cuestión más concreta a Miguel. And I will give the floor now to our last panelist, Mr. Caranta, who is a renowned professor at the University of Turin, who has done a lot of work on the issue of green public procurement. So in this sense, Mr. Caranta, we have said the letter report stressed the importance of sustainable procurement strategies for a green and competitive transition in Europe. According to you, how the new revision of the directive can have an impact on the European competitiveness and especially the enhancement of a made in Europe industrial model. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I have some slides, so please let's go immediately to the second one. As you have already pointed out, public procurement now is becoming a tool for many policies. It's the internal market, sustainability, innovation, resilience, and these days is also more and more industrial policy. Having the idea of a European preference is the idea that we need to repatriate some strategic production. And this, of course, is important for public procurement, again, the 14% and so on. The point is that so far, a lot has already been done in the past legislature, especially in 2023 and even more in 2024. But it is not well coordinated, next slide please, with the public procurement rules. I think now is the time that the general public procurement rules take stock of what has happened and bring these forward. There is a need for coordination. And, okay, we are waiting for the omnibus, a bit scared, but as far as I've seen, the proposal is not touching the provision on public procurement. And I hope it will not touch the provision on the public procurement because this is really an important lever, because it's the lever to go beyond the link to the subject matter. And we have already been told that this link to the subject matter is really having a freezing, chilling effect on public buyers. It's the idea that I don't care how ethical is a company. I just care whether it is ethical when it is working with me, which doesn't make, honestly, any sense. And the corporate sustainability due diligence provision on public procurement, including the recital, can allow us to go beyond. So my colleague was saying, oh, we should consider, for instance, you have signed a contract with the trade unions, you get extra points. This is only possible if we go beyond the link to the subject matter. Also, but again, it was already said, we needed to rethink exclusions and also make them easier, like whitelist, blacklist. I also think we really need to provide some help, like help desk, EU level, national level, to help contracting authorities to really change their focus, but not just the focus. I totally agree with what was said in the first panel. You needed to change the way auditors reason, because otherwise contracting authorities, public procurer, they will try to go the easy way, not taking a risk, because these people are not understanding that public procurement has been changing for the past at least 11 years. And so there is a lot of need to address not just procurement, but everything that goes around the public procurement. And this, of course, must be done taking into account also SMEs, their part. There are already provisions like subdivision into lots that was already mentioned. What more can be done? Simplification. And I think there is one message that is not clear enough. Mandatory doesn't mean complication. Mandatory actually can mean simplification, because you know what you do. So the idea that mandatory is complication is just the neoliberal approach that any rule is complication. No, there are rules that are helping in making things clearer. So mandatory criteria will be useful for contracting authorities, but also for contractors, also for SMEs. They will know what is the limit, what does the contractor, the contracting authority want to get. And we need, and this is my slide basically, to really harness, guide what discretion is left, next slide please, to the contracting authority. And I think we need, it's many aspects, but one aspect that was already referred to is Article 18.2, sorry. I think that there is one thing that must be done. 18.2 is not enough to have member state shall. It's contracting authorities shall. Is putting an obligation on the level of contracting authorities so that they do what is mandatory by law. We are not asking them to go beyond what is mandatory by law. We are asking them to do what is mandatory by law. Another aspect was already referred to is non-price criteria. It will take time to change the minds of auditors, but if lowest price is a non-illegal option, they will never go telling contracting authorities, oh, why you didn't use lowest price? Well, it's against the law. Very easy. It's already finished. And what also must be really increased is sustainability reporting. So I totally agree with what was said before. We need to develop criteria, the Commission. We needed to have clear criteria, means of proofs, but also how do you check and report what you have done. For instance, and that's the last point, in the reporting modules that are now annexed to the directives, sustainability aspects are just an optional requirement. Contracting authority, if they feel, they can feel it, otherwise who cares? This is not going to bring us towards using really public procurement to make our society better and make even our society more competitive. It's just risking green social washing and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Professor. Very interesting. We are running out of time, so we will have 2 questions, very short. So, and I have to say that, to be fair, Miguel didn't use the same amount of time of the rest of the panelists. So if any of the questions are addressed to him, I will prioritize that one. This is for Miguel? Okay, then you, and then, okay, you, one-on-one.
Annika Eberstein, I work for Philips. So we obviously are a company that responds to tenders. And a full agreement that we need mandatory environmental weighting and criteria, so we get actually a return on the investment we make in sustainable innovation. I have a question to Mr. Krishna regarding your position on the threshold, because obviously there's a lot of...
Sorry.
Too long?
Yeah, because I asked a question for Miguel, and you said yes. So you address it to another panelist.
Oh, sorry.
Be short, please, and then I will take 2 more, and hopefully, because that's what...
I'm just asking, so actually, Mr. Benito Lopez can answer that too, regarding the threshold. So if you, as a procurer, think that the threshold should be lowered as well in the directive to expand the scope.
Thank you. One here, maybe one here, very short, and then the panelists will answer.
Thank you very much. This is Francisco Herrera from Food Service Europe. Food Service Europe is the contract catering business association. So very briefly, a comment from the employer's side. We are fully aligned with the call for best value and for limiting the price, so it's very welcome what Professor Caranta said. With our social partners here, we have a joint declaration on collective agreements and public procurement. But I wanted to raise a concern of having mandatory sustainability criteria for food procurement, because there is simply not enough sustainable food, organic food. MEP Jouvet has mentioned that we have floods in Spain.
It's not a question.
No, so my question is it really important to introduce mandatory sustainability criteria in line of the floods, droughts, lack of organic produce? It has been mentioned also in the panel that we have droughts and climate change concerns. And to help SMEs, is it really the way to go to introduce mandatory criteria? Thank you.
Thank you. Finally.
Thank you very much. I'm Belén Martí. I'm representing the healthcare sector for a medtech innovator. And I wanted to ask, all of the panelists, I have not heard today healthcare, and I wanted to ask all of you, where do we have healthcare in the agenda? As we have, specifically on the healthcare sector, we have patients dying because the technology and the process of procurement is taking longer than the patients that are awaiting healthcare delivery, and also because more than 70% of the procurement is based on price. What is your thinking about that? Because me, as a European citizen, I'm really concerned that we are procuring the lowest technology, the lowest delivery of care, instead of looking into what is best for improving the outcomes of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So 1 minute each, you can do it. You start, Miguel, and if... Oh, yeah.
En cuanto a los umbrales, mi opinión es que no sirven de mucho, porque los umbrales simplemente, a efectos de normativa nacional, simplemente lo único que hacen es exigir la publicación previa en el DOE, pero no un criterio diferente, una forma de tramitar el expediente de forma diferente a lo que hacemos en el ámbito interno nacional nuestro. Mi idea y mi propuesta sería que tendrían que bajarse más los umbrales o desaparecer. Todo es Unión Europea y todos se tienen que tramitar de la misma manera. En cuanto a los objetivos ambientales que comentaba, nosotros creemos que, lo decía antes, si solo tenemos en cuenta lo que es el precio del producto, sin tener en cuenta las externalidades que se generan cuando se hace ese producto, pues estaremos otra vez en el criterio economista simplemente. Entonces hay que meter de alguna manera esta pauta o este criterio de sostenibilidad, medirlo y decir, oiga, es que un aguacate traído de Perú es mucho más caro económicamente y ambientalmente por los efectos que produce que no criado, por ejemplo, a un kilómetro de cero. Y en cuanto a la sanidad, es verdad que nosotros dentro del ámbito nacional tenemos diferentes tipologías de servicios que pueden ser reservados a empresas o centros especiales de inserción o entidades de economía social, y entre ellos son los que forman el núcleo duro del estado de bienestar, que son los sociales, sanitarios y culturales, que solo pueden estar reservados a este tipo de entidades de economía social. Y por otra parte, hay otra figura que se llama la gestión delegada o concertada, que está fuera del ámbito de la contratación pública, que es simplemente el otorgamiento a un determinado tipo de entidad sin ánimo de lucro de la posibilidad de gestionar algún servicio sanitario o social.
Thank you. 1 minute, Professor, and then 1 minute, Jan.
Thank you. Well, very fast. The problem is to have mandatory criteria that reflect the actual reality, that are based on serious market research, but also that are already ingrained for growth, to allow the market to grow, to tell the market, okay, demand for this biofruit will grow from 10% this year to 30% in 5 years, so that there is time for reconversion. And of course, agriculture is lower than other areas. In other areas, the market, because of technical reason, can respond faster. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for your question. If the question was about should it be reduced, yes, I think it should be reduced, but I should also keep in mind that these are not coming from 2014, they're coming much earlier, and there's 20 years of separation of how the systems have worked in the member states and at the EU level, so there's a lot more consideration to be done. So one of the suggestions was probably to look at how we can improve just the monitoring, not necessarily report everything back or bring everything under the same thresholds. So that was my suggestion on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to all the panelists. Here we close the second panel. I think it was super interesting. We took a lot of notes, and I think they will help us in the coming months for the reflection, for the negotiations we will have in IMCO, in EMPOL, and from the full S&D group. Now I give the floor to our Vice President to the closing remarks. Thank you, everybody.
So thank you very much to the distinguished experts, and I think also this difference of practical people that really do public procurement every day and oversee it, and people that do research and come from other practical fields. I think it is important here if we want to make this project a success. And I think we have a lot of empirical evidence, we have a lot of surveys, we have a lot of analysis, and we just have to make something out of it. And this might be, I think that was a bit of an undertone here, but I think rightly so. There can be also progressive projects of simplification. That doesn't mean deregulation, but really mean simple, clear legislation with a high level of legal security, and at the same time using 2 trillion euros to deliver better for citizens, consumers, and society, because what we haven't touched is, but what you touched also is the cost of not doing so. That will be shifted to society, to the social security systems, to the welfare systems. That is not included in this. And last but not least, to the environment, because then everyone will suffer because if we don't achieve the goals that we have set. So in this sense, indeed, we have one progressive position between IMCO and EMPL. We have a lot of stakeholders here sitting in the room, from trade unions, from NGOs, from environmental organizations, from the regions, from the cities, all going in one direction, that we want a better public procurement directive here and regulation. And in this sense, we will continue to work with you. Thank you very much for your interest, for staying here so long, participating. See you all soon, and I take up the word of Esther, that hopefully we also meet when we are successful. Thank you very much.